Education meeting. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion.
Can I have a second? All in favor? All right. The Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education will convene for the purpose of collective negotiation under the Taylor Law, medical, financial credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, where matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion to move into exec?
Motion.
Have a second? All in favor? Okay, we'll be back at approximately 7 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. The board really tries to be on time, and we ran a little bit over tonight. Thank you for joining us. We've just returned from executive session. Maybe all stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to begin this evening with some great recognition. I'll let Superintendent Hawkrider speak to that.
Yes, I'd like to welcome up Alan Zollner. Alan is one of our high school teachers, and one of our priorities over the next number of years that has come out of our strategic plan is to continue to network with local and area businesses to make sure that students are having real-world experiences. And our Project Lead the Way program at the high school embodies real-world experiences, and we have a steering team and a network team that works with businesses in the region to make sure that what we're doing in the classroom is preparing students for what happens outside of the classroom. And one very unique experience took place in December that Mr. Zollner is here to give a little background to, and then he has a couple of students who are going to speak to their experience. So Mr. Zollner, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, my name is Alan Zollner. I'm a science and engineering teacher here at the high school. And I am here with a couple of students tonight, Matthew Bronner and Walker Piccolo Hill, who are in our Project Lead the Way Principles of Engineering course that I teach. Honestly, we would have a lot more students here today, but this meeting is at the same time as driver's ed. I didn't want to miss that. I'm sure you understand. I'd like to thank you for inviting PLTW students to appear here from time to time. Before I introduce Matt and Walker, I thought you'd like to know that I recently, that one of our alumni who appeared here a few years ago recently contacted me, Kyle Sendro. I don't know if you folks remember Kyle. You know, he left here, he went on to get a degree in electrical engineering from Rensselaer, and then is now working for the spacecraft company Virgin Orbit. Anyway, he contacted me from Britain, where he has been working on the quite highly publicized first rocket launch ever from the UK. And you know, I think that we can all be quite proud of the hand that we've played in helping students reach such lofty goals. Now, to this evening's invitation, a little over a month ago, as Mr. Hawkrider mentioned, our Principles of Engineering class visited the Certainty drywall manufacturing plant located right here in Buchanan. Our students were welcomed there by the plant manager, Mr. Paul Woolweaver, and they had the opportunity to meet a diverse group of professionals, engineers, and non-engineers that run the operation, and to walk through real-world applications of science and engineering and business that were all around them in the context of that plant. So now I'll step aside and we'll let Matthew and Walker tell you what they thought of that experience. So let's start with Walker. You want to come first? Walker's in 10th grade.
Hello, my name is Walker Piccolo. This experience was very educational. We started with a fun and educational plant tour of the entire plant tour with in-depth details of how each machine part worked. After that, we had a talk with the real-life engineers, and they told us about engineering as a career and why it's a good path.
Thank you. And 11th grade?
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm a junior here at NHUD. And as soon as we got off the bus to the field trip, we were greeted by everyone, shook hands with every single guy that was in the room. Paul Woolweaver was first. He was an amazing guy. He welcomed us. It was so welcoming. Got in, sat down, and then first thing he said, welcomed us with treats, donuts, and coffee. So, I mean, that was a plus. But on top of that, after we went on the plant tour, we got to learn everything about everyone's background that was on there, some of the engineers, and like what college they went to and what kind of engineering field they're in, or if they weren't an engineer, if they were part of the finance department and stuff like that. It was really cool to see how everyone kind of meshed together, came up as a team. They really were like family there. And it kind of translates to like what we learned in the classroom doing projects, teamwork and stuff, but it just displayed on a larger scale. So it was really beneficial to me to see that and just to learn everything about what goes on after college. Because as a junior, I'm worried about college next year. So it's really cool to see what goes on after. And it was just, going into it, I thought it was going to be a good field trip, but I got way more out of it than I expected. I was really grateful to go on that field trip.
Thank you.
So you heard a couple of voices here. After the trip, I asked students to just write a little reflection. The technical part, what mechanical equipment, what electrical equipment, computer equipment, and so on, where they saw statistics, those types of things. But then also their feelings about the trip and whether they'd recommend that in the future. And the comments you heard here were typical of what the students thought. They all thought, we should be doing more of this. And so, I'm really happy about that. So, I just want to say that as a teacher in this district, I continue to be very impressed with the extraordinary resources in this community and the commitment that it shows towards the students in this district. So it's good to be part of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so before we get into our audience comments for non-agenda items, the board would like me to share a statement with you all. As you know, Princeton Plan is not on our agenda tonight. The board would like to provide an update to the community on the topic of Princeton Plan. This evening's meeting will not have a specific portion dedicated to discussion on the current or future grade banding model. We realize that it is not on the agenda this evening and want to be very transparent and clear with everyone. The board has asked for engagement from the community, and we value and appreciate all of you who have reached out to share feedback and input. It does not go unnoticed or unheard. We hear you. In fact, we hear you so loud that we are worried about the divide that is still growing daily. Please be kind to one another. What is right for you and your family may not be right for someone else. We are all different in many ways, and embracing those differences allows us to create better tomorrows. Please respect each other. With that said, the board is working with the administration on this topic, and we do not have any updates at this time. This is incredibly important and will have a direct impact on the future of the district. There's information still being organized. The risk of sharing data prematurely and conversation around said data may contribute to the continuation of the divide that we are feeling. We do hope to have an update at the next meeting for you all. With that said, we're going to move on to our audience comments section. I do believe that speakers are, Carmen, did you hand this out to speakers tonight? Okay, I'll just highlight some important notes. We welcome public comment. We're glad that you're here. The board is here to listen to you. We have an allotted 15-minute section of time for public comment, but we realize that there are quite a number of speakers and we want to make sure that we hear from everybody. Each speaker should sign in, which I believe everybody did. If you have not, please do so. Please step up to the podium when Carmen calls your name, and please state your name. Each speaker has 3 minutes. We have to hold hard and true no matter who you are or what you're talking about. Unfortunately, at 3 minutes, we do have to cut off. Greg will put a timer on the screen, so please pay attention to that. Please do not address anybody in the room. You're here to speak to the board. No one's going to respond to you, and we ask for respect for our personnel and our administrators. All right, with that said, Carmen, who is our first speaker tonight?
Our first speaker tonight is Joan Bowen.
horrible public speaking phobia. So I'll be really quick. I can pull the mic down. I'm pulling the mic down.
It's all right, we're short, it's okay.
I just came to say out loud that I was on the Princeton Plan Committee, that I support it. We did a lot of research, we spent a lot of time. There are definitely things like transportation that are a total disaster that need to be worked out. And, but I do support the plan itself. I wanted to make sure I shared that with you, and that my elementary school child, who's currently doing really well with the change, you can hear my voice going. I also I've watched the last 2 board meetings, and there were some board comments that were really, it really conveyed really entrenched positions on the Princeton plan that were concerning to me, because I want total objectivity. Is that too much to ask, right? It's almost impossible for human beings to do that, but as much as you can to be as objective as possible. And I also heard a lot of comparing from board members, like, you know, maybe I have kids and you don't, and there's a difference between the stakes here. And I would hope that you would rise above that to maybe see it from an aerial view. And just lastly, if you didn't watch the independent expert Indian Point meeting online last week, just check that one out too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Frank Dominguez.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to publicly state for the record that I feel that the school district's leadership did not properly represent the district residents' concerns, and also misled the district residents prior to the implementation of the Princeton plan. The failure that the district has created, this failure of the district has created a 2023 version of the Mason-Dixon line and has literally cut the community in half. It has become extremely uncomfortable for residents on both sides of opposing viewpoints, with blame being pointed at one another. In reality, the blame should fall on one party, and that really is the school's leadership. Because the district has failed to listen to the residents on both sides prior to the Princeton plan and continues to mislead residents to cover up its failures after its implementation, you have created a divide amongst all of us. Opinions on both sides are strong, and listening to each other's concerns is imperative to reaching an agreeable solution for everybody. But no one can go against the facts associated with the issues. Facts that unfortunately are being laid out by residents on both sides of the district rather than the actual leadership of the district. I ask the board to impose a motion at the end of this agenda section to release the independent third-party consultants report that shows the grade banding model that we chose and the insight that they put into the grade banding model. I believe it was stated before that the grade banding model was the least attractive one to deal with our solution. Let's not lose sight of why we are here, because of a decision made to help our looming financial issue due to the closing of Indian Point. I don't think anybody in this room and anyone in the district believes that inequalities for children should be tolerated at all. What I ask is, why didn't the district fix these issues if they existed prior to the Princeton plan? And why the community school system cannot provide that solution for every resident? No one has been able to answer any of these questions for me. Please look at the facts. Please move to release this report so that everyone can be educated, just like you are. The facts matter. Thank you.
Yep.
Our next speaker is Bill Wallace.
Oh, we discussed this podium last time, that's right. Maybe we can retrofit this when we retrofit the buildings, but let's talk about some stuff here. So on December 1st, I was at that meeting, I spoke, obviously. You heard from many parents. Feelings on both sides on the matter were aired. Now it's time to talk some facts, and I think that's where this lies. Let's just keep to the facts and keep the children at hand first. That's what we have to, that's what we have to strive to do. Keep the children first. So the facts, 2 petitions have been created with very opposed views, as we know, on the Princeton plan. We're very much at odds, as we just mentioned, and and it seems on its purpose and its ability to achieve common goals. We're not there. The proponents of the plan claim that more than 15 of 33 districts in Westchester have a grade banding model. Well, we took a look, analyzed the data from NICED, and determined that there are actually 39 unique school districts in Westchester. Of those, only 14 use some level of grade banding. So that's not true. Of those, only 4, or roughly 10%, use our model of 2-year grade banding. Peekskill, Osting, Hen Hud, and Greenberg. No, we're not the next Byron Hills, as has been suggested. Fact, spanning roughly 9 driving miles, and we are the second largest school district in Westchester County that is grade banded. The average distance to furthest elementary schools in a grade banded district is 1.9 miles. BV and Furnace Woods are 5.4 miles apart, okay? Those who live on the extremities of the district are up to 6+ miles away from an elementary school their child will be attending. My daughter, for that matter, on her birthday, looked at me and cried and said, "Daddy, I don't want to do the long bus ride on my birthday. Can you drive me?" Where's the win there? There is none, okay? So let's think about that. 6 miles doesn't seem like a lot, but a bus ride for a 5-, 6-year-old, that's a lot. It's a whole lot. It's a lot for me, I'm 52. To put this in perspective, New York City is 13 miles from tip to tip. Okay, so we're asking our children every day to ride 13 miles to get to school or from school. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked, it doesn't work. And not to say, did we consider the cost of diesel, the depreciation on the buses that we have right now, and when we're going to have to replace them, the wear and tear? That hasn't even come up. So what I will say is I appreciate what you guys and gals and team is doing because you're hearing us out. And that's really, really important. We matter. The community matters. The children matter. One thing I will say, though, that really has bothered me is in December 1st meeting, it was said that we need to just continue to look forward and not look back. I'm in cybersecurity, okay? If I got popped, if I got breached, and I didn't look back to see how I got breached, they'd hand me a box and fire me tomorrow. So let's make sure we do look back and not make the same mistakes that we're making now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christine Lehman.
One end of the district.
We need to set the record straight on the difference between equity and equality, because these two terms are not synonymous. Equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. Equity means each individual or group of people is given the same resources or opportunities, but does not necessarily result in equal outcomes. Fact, according to NICED data from 2021 to 2022, there is little variance in the student-teacher ratios among the 3 schools. FGL had on average 10.48 students per teacher, BB 9.84, and Furnace Woods 8.17. It is worth noting that Furnace Woods had the ABC program there as well, which accounts for smaller classes being averaged in. Also from the data prior to Princeton Plan, BB benefited from additional Title I funding that the other elementary schools in the district did not, due to its participation in a Title I school-wide program. Our previous model was equitable. BB had more, not less resources than others. However, because school-wide Title I funding is based on a concentration of eligible students at a particular school, it is no longer available with Princeton Plan, thus depriving those students benefited from it. So what was equitable is no longer. In terms of some kids being given Xerox copies in place of books or homework helpers, it was confirmed that resource disparities come down to the administration and principals. Our school budget is divided into 3 major categories: administrative, capital, and program instruction. Each school is allowed to draw from the same pot of money as needed, and it's up to each principal to spend the budget at their discretion. Disparities in resources cannot be chalked up to inequity. Furthermore, the same administration that did not allocate funds to homework helpers is now at another building, and presumably the same practices will follow. Excuse me. Only now those practices will impact the district at large, which is equal but not equitable. What we have done with grade banding is make each school feel much larger. It's like going from a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in the sea. Research suggests that those of lower socioeconomic status do better in the former environment. 2 studies concluded that the smaller size is especially beneficial for impoverished students, that this is a majority equity issue, and advocated for smaller schools. They considered grade banding schools larger because it results in more kids in fewer grades, which adversely affects the impoverished students as per the study, and is deemed, therefore, inequitable. They also concluded that cost with the community school model is actually reduced. Princeton Plan doesn't work because it's more expensive than the K-5 model. And at a time when cost savings are the goal, we must stay focused. And it doesn't work because it is inequitable. Let us not suffer the sunk cost fallacy. It's not too late to turn this ship around. We owe it to our district and most of all to our children.
Our next speaker is Theodora Caladoris.
Numerous studies by experts in peer-reviewed journals and articles have researched grade banding models in comparison to K-5 models and the effects of student mobility within school districts on learning and social behavior. A 2012 study concluded that each transition shows a discernible drop in achievement. Teachers with incoming students say that they are not sufficiently prepared because between school instruction is not well articulated, so there's a significant amount of reteaching. The inference, of course, is that due to presumably reduced collaboration among faculty members between schools, the transitions are particularly cumbersome in our model. Schools experience high student turnover rates. This makes it hard for staff to get to know all students and creates significant adjustment strains. Each transition requires a significant effort by schools to help the students acclimate. Parents are often not included in these adjustments, which leads to a decline in parent involvement. Students do not develop an identity with any school, only with the district, which the author suggests reflects a failure for students to feel a real sense of trust and belonging. A 2007 study analyzed the effects of the grade banding model on early education by comparing it to the other models such as K-5. It found that they learned more math and reading in the latter. A recent 2021 study was conducted by the Hewlett-Woodmere School District on Long Island. Their research yielded significant achievement loss in the year following the transition. Lack of communication between schools resulted in redundant and excessive reteaching of curriculum, decrease in relationships with teachers and staff, and they noted that with each transition, students are forced to, and I quote, learn a whole new set of rules over a whole new set of routines, a whole new set of procedure. This in turn creates an obstacle for student learning. We must assume our district is similarly aware of these negative effects of transition on children. Quote, sometimes transitions can produce anxiety in children and families, end quote. That is from our own recent Blue Mountain Middle School newsletter. In terms of ICT students, one can infer that such effects will be exacerbated for those with learning challenges. For these students, the 2-year model would seem untenable. And as for the highly touted STEM class we acquired this year, it came at the expense of both library and a core curriculum class, Science 21. Core curriculum courses are supposed to be taught by a special ed teacher in a limited class setting of no more than 12 children. Because it's a special that replaced it, their science class is now taught by a general ed teacher not certified in special ed and in a much larger class setting than recommended. Do we wait a couple years to gather additional data, or do we act immediately and in the best interest of all our children's academic future?
Our next speaker is Aaliyah Larala.
Carmen, that's our allotted 15 minutes of time for speakers, but I'd like to make a motion to extend that period. Second. All in favor? Okay, thank you.
I did a great deal of research on the merits of the Princeton Plan. Now it's out in the ether, and here's my story. My kindergartner came off the bus last Friday crying. He had a small, hard plastic container clamped painfully to his lip, and it was turning blue. He was too embarrassed to alert the driver because he's 5, so he sat on the bus for God knows how long, crying in silence. Steve, our driver, noticed he was crying as he got off the bus and apologized profusely. It's not his fault, obviously. He has to drive the bus, not babysit. The bus ride is just too long for a kindergartner to be left unattended. My daughter goes to Buchanan Day Camp every summer and has since the age of 5. I was hoping the Princeton plan would bring her together with her friends. As it turns out, she doesn't see most of them and she feels like a number. So much for bringing the community together. I'm a musician. I moved up here from New York City and left behind a career to give my kids the experience that I never had growing up. I was drawn to this district in particular by its robust award-winning music program, so strong it even gets a shout out on its Wikipedia page. This year, the 5th grade band had an opportunity to rehearse all together as an ensemble only twice before the winter concert. 2 times. One of which was in the gymnasium while an actual gym class was in progress. The fact that the parents have to be shuttled over from parking lots to other schools to accommodate the large grade, the lack of planning for the infrastructure accommodations that would be necessary to support this plan when the administration has had well over a year, quite frankly, is shocking. All of this speaks to the lack of seriousness with which the implementation of this drastic overhaul was treated. Even the people who are for the plan admit that it is a complete, for lack of better term, bleep show. The town, the community, the taxpayers, and ultimately our children deserve better. I will say something else. I do find it surprising that the administration would ask the president of the teachers union to endorse Princeton plan prior to its adoption against the interest of her position as union president, against the interests of the teachers she serves to represent. It would mean cutting several positions and weakening the union. It would seem inappropriate. It came to my attention that the teachers had to move themselves and in many cases even provide for their own moving supplies. I was advised that the move was laborious and time-consuming for them. Is it any wonder that many of them do not want to move again if we go back to a K-5 model? I think I speak for many of us when we feel grossly let down by the district. This was never about equity, it was about finances. The hallmark of good leadership is not in the mistakes that are made or avoided, but rather in how the leader manages to turn the ship around and course correct. It is not too late. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tim Casey.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. As she said, my name is Tim Casey. I am a proud Penn HUD alum. I'm also the father of a potential PreK student next year. I want to start with cost because that's where this all started. Indian Point closed down, blew a big hole in our budget. We needed to figure it out. A big study was conducted, and we came to this. And this is where we are right now. Cost, right? It's been exhausted, the conversation of cost. And the conclusion, as most of us realize, it doesn't work, right? We've gotten to the point now where the cost is going to potentially become more in the future, right? We even talked about buying more buses, fixing the transportation. As more problems arise, we're gonna throw money at it, we're gonna figure it out, or we're gonna cut somewhere else. So remember, if this ever gets to a vote, benchmark number 1 is cost. That's why we started this, that's where we have to start, okay? Second, the idea that's being floated around the community that this is 5 months in is slightly inaccurate and misleading. This was voted and passed in April of 2021. In June of 2021, on the district website, we threw up, we are planning 15 months in advance to make sure the reorganization is seamless as possible. This has been almost 2 years in. That's where we are right now, okay? Not 5 months, but close to 2 years. And clearly 2 years, or 15 months, excuse me, wasn't enough. Will we wait another 15 months to figure this out and hope that something changes? A wise man once told me, hope is not a strategy, right? We need to figure that out. With regards to transportation, all I will say is decreasing the bus time from an average of 40 minutes to 30 minutes or thereabouts is not a win. It's not acceptable to put a 5-year-old on a bus for 30 minutes on a good day. As we've heard, there could be horror stories. Further, I agree with the statement you said at first. Every voice must be heard and must be heard equally. However, I'm potentially living in this district and the policies for the next 13 years. Hearing someone tell me just give it another year, just wait it out, let's see what happens, is not acceptable. I have 13 years ahead of me with this. I can't waste 1 or 2 with a 5-year-old. A year or 2 in the life of a 5-year-old is enormous, okay? So finally, the conversation of sunk costs and whether or not we go back. That's short-sighted. Do not go back because of sunk costs. If you're gonna do the change, do it now. Get back to where we were, look at what the problems were, and let's fix them, okay? Princeton plan was not the answer. As one of your board members said in the last couple of years, it's not right for this district. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Joe Ryan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Some familiar faces at the board, some veterans. I still have the black book with the merits and demerits. Especially you. All right, bottom line, I appreciate you've gotten my letter. I am in support of the Princeton plan. I've done my homework. I opened Blue Mountain Middle School in 1969, and Frank Thomas called me. I was living in a converted apartment on Harper Avenue, and he said, "Joe, you want desks in your room? Get out here and load them." I did. And if you stepped out the back door of my classroom and went 3 stories down because we weren't backfilled. So some of us teachers got pretty used to moving stuff. The bottom line, what you appealed to us tonight for a unified district is vital. You are spot on. Now, I come from a frozen brain country. My town called Chattagay, 16 million pounds of cheddar cheese aging at any one moment. A rural place. A lot of us rode a lot of buses. I walked. I was in town. Not uphill both ways in the snow either. But we did have plenty of snow. It didn't seem to hurt us, okay? The point is, and I'm just going to leave this as a quote. My father was the first public defender of Franklin County and then many times district attorney. So, tried to get him out and then put him back in. But he used to look at his jury. And you look like the jury right now to me. And he says, you're over here and you're going to be in judgment. You're going to make a judgment. You're going to weigh your evidence. And you've heard people who really care. Everybody in this room cares. And you're in the spot. But you didn't park your brains at the door. Go with your heart, go with your brains. And democracy's messy. And you never, when you signed up for this, you didn't expect it was going to be this way. But I have confidence in you. I have confidence in this community. Because my living history program, which 3 of you are products of, came out of the whole community working together, all right? And these people care. And Tamika, I know you're working, but the point is, we all care about our kids. And you're doing the best job you can. You don't deserve to get any garbage on Facebook and the rest of that stuff. But, do the best you can, and we're gonna live with it. Because you know what? The bottom line, the kids aren't gonna suffer that much if you do the job the way you feel it's gonna work for this community. So that's the only charge to the jury. Don't park your brains at the door. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Kirsten Irwin.
Hi, my name is Kristen Irwin. I served on the planning committee. I have made my feelings about the Princeton plan known to this administration since 2020. A 2-year grade banding model harms the social emotional development of young children and leads to learning losses. And I agree that we cannot go back to the way things were. Some of our neighbors were underserved. Recently, a panel of experts unanimously agreed that BV Elementary should be closed. The school's proximity to the demolition by Holtec, accompanied with documented accidents at its decommissioning site in New Jersey, combined with the proximity to a gas pipeline with documented leaks into our soil running 400 feet from our school's cafeteria, is too great a risk. As a former radiation therapist, I treated pediatric patients with cancer. I witnessed parents pretending that their children had a future beyond those painful treatments. And I don't want that for us. I don't want that for any of us, and that possibility is preventable. FGL must be expanded and BV closed. At every meeting, the board requests that community members who choose to speak demonstrate a polite democratic process for the youth of the district, yet they prohibit us from criticizing its members by name. And that is not democracy, that is authoritarianism. It is up to us to demand the best available safety measures through our chosen officials. We must not fear to question the authorities that shape our community's safety. Our apathy towards the risk of this demolition puts all of us at risk. The people living along the Hudson River from Poughkeepsie to Staten Island. We hold the key to this safety. Are we more concerned with our property values than the quality of our children's futures? Holtec wants to avoid extensive safeguarding because it cuts into their profits. Simple, bottom line. Our superintendent was given a seat on the decommissioning board where he is silent about these safety measures. The funds for real-time monitoring are secured, but BV opened this year without those monitors active. Joseph Hawkreiter is entering his 10th year as the CEO of our district, and he has tolerated the inequities in this community calls to change. He has allowed the spotlight to turn away from himself and onto his community.
I ask that you respect the rule that we're not allowed to address personnel. Thank you.
Right, I'm respecting democracy. Pause and let's go back time. We're allowing the spotlight to turn away from administration and onto this community, allowing neighbors to argue with one another. Josh Cohen was the principal at BV for over 10 years, and he allowed that building to degrade, not the residents of Cortland. He did not advocate for the children in his care. He allowed you to think you deserve less than your
please, I understand, but we asked you not to speak about personnel.
Who here with power stands to profit from this community ignoring Holtec's demo process? I encourage all stakeholders to question this leadership and the conformists to do your bidding. You who have destabilized our community and allowed all of this to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and your participation.
Our next speaker is Christine Tian.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christine Tian. I am a mother of 3 children. I have a 2nd grader, a kindergartner, and a 3-year-old who I am hoping goes to preschool here next year. He's already has an IEP, he's in the CPSE system, so you know, I've got a lot of stake in this, and I am an advocate of a grade banding model, you know. And even more than I am an advocate for the Princeton plan, I actually am anti going backwards and I am pro compromise. And that's really what I want to talk about. And I think there's bigger issues at play here that people are just not really paying attention to. So there's been a lot of research and questions about data tossed around in this room and on social media. And as important as data and details are, very much, they are important, but they are not everything when it comes to the big picture. There is not a single person in this room or elsewhere who can understand the big picture until they're actually listening to everybody. Because it's not just about hearing, it's about listening. A few more votes on one petition is not a win for anybody. It's an indication that there's a very real split in the community and that these problems existed before the Princeton plan was enacted. So leadership needs to come in and find middle ground and find this place, because when we don't get to the middle ground, that void is filled with anger and vitriol, and I think we've been witnessing that happen in our community. So if you know that our community is so deeply divided, almost exactly in half, then to completely go in one direction or the other is to completely neglect half the voices that you claim to represent. There has to be a compromise. And deeper problems have come out of this, but they existed before this, and they need to take precedence when you are determining next steps. So, undoing the Princeton plan doesn't delete from memory yelling voices and offensive Facebook comments. On top of that, another very expensive and vital need in our district is the curriculum. The reading and writing curricula that we pay massive amounts of money for has been scientifically proven to actually not work. You want to go on data, you want to look at NICID, go on data.nicid.gov and look at our reading and writing scores and the proficiency of our students. It is not good. Look up Readers and Writers Workshop, the method that we use to teach our youngsters reading and writing. Look it up, Google it, research. It will take you 10 minutes to realize there's a major issue with how we teach our youngsters to read and write. So it matters more that our kids learn how to read and write. And maybe one day they'll have enough skills to come here, sit here, and do the creative problem solving that it takes to bring people together rather than drive them apart. And my last plea is listen to the educators. I am a former teacher. I am a current teacher trainer, and teachers' voices are not out here. No one's listening to them. I don't hear them, and they matter. They are the heart of this district. They spend more time with our kids than we do. So thank you for very much.
So that was the end of the second 15-minute period. Carmen, how many more speakers do we have?
7.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to extend the public comment period. Second. Okay, all in favor?
Our next speaker is Michelle McGohill.
I wasn't expecting to speak so soon. I was hoping it would take longer. Hello, I wasn't actually going to speak tonight, but then someone sort of guilted me into it. So I'm going to read a little thing that I have written here before I go off book, because there's so many things that I think about this, that it's probably safer if I go off of here. I wanted to say that I remain a huge advocate for the grade banding model. It creates equity and opportunities and resources, creates efficiencies in staffing, and offers the potential for new programs like earlier second language, STEM, and so on. Above all, it is inclusive and fair, and allows one hen HUD, all the emotional and social implications of that unity. And just to go off book for a second, right now, there isn't unity. Right now, community school model means that you're either a BB kid, an FGL kid, or Furnace Woods kid. That is not unity, that is not one hen HUD. We always knew this restructuring would be difficult, both logistically and culturally. There's a lot of history and familiarity with how it was. Being someone that grew up in the district, there was always this issue. There was always this underlying bias. This is not new. This has been needed for decades. Change is always difficult, but it is far too soon to label this as a debacle and pointless to squabble about the politics and posturing that got us here. There were fundamentally good and important reasons to undertake this change. My main reason is the bias, which a lot of people are not addressing, because the bias is real and the children do hear it. For example, I myself heard kids from BV, someone said, can they do math? When schools in need of improvement was approached, because Furnace Woods parents didn't want BV kids in their class. They were afraid that they were going to hurt the level of education that their children were getting. I personally sat there, and other people were there as well and heard the same statements. Sorry, where was I? I told you I shouldn't go off button. Changing back for next year is absurd. The advantages and benefits are not simple measurable metrics. The benefits will happen over many years as our community grows more united and stronger for embracing the wide diversity of talents, backgrounds, cultures, interests that our students bring to all of their schools. And I guess I just want to say with these last 24 seconds, differences help our kids. They strengthen our children. Our world is getting smaller because our world is becoming, there's more of a mesh of cultures and interests and people. To keep them from that diversity is just doing them harm. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mariella Pasquale.
I feel like everything has been said and I'm not really sure where to go with this. I'm gonna speak from my heart right now. To all the mama bears out there, I feel you. I know how it feels, those sleepless nights, the anger, the tears, the knots in your stomach. God, I have a knot in my stomach right now. And the complete, utter feeling of being helpless. And of course, the matching shirts and the matching colors. We were there. We were there 2 years ago. And it pretty much sucks. I think the difference here is that you had a choice. You chose your home, you chose your elementary school. Us, not so much. We thought we did, and then everything was pulled out from under us and ripped away. Everything we had grown to love about our community school. It was far from perfect, trust me, but it was our second home and it was stable. Now we have multiple homes, broken family. My 3 children will make 9 total transitions before high school. 9. This is a recipe for academic and developmental failure. No matter who sits on this board, the Princeton plan has always been and will always be a mistake. And the way it was rolled out for our district, it was done wrong. Some of you know in your heart and your mind, just like Mr. Ryan said, your heart and your mind, that this was a mistake. It was a really expensive Band-Aid, and perhaps it's the reason that drove you to run for this board. So many things could have been solved from an administration level. The one at the top should have acted as a true leader and brought us all together, instead of watching us fight and pitting us all against each other as we are now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lisa Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Anderson. I'm the parent of 5 children, 3 of whom are Henhead graduates, and 2 of whom are in the high school. And I was a member of the board when it voted in favor of transitioning to the Princeton plan. I am standing up today to say that I still support the board's decision to move the district to a grade banded model. I have been watching all of the board meetings since I left the board and have become increasingly concerned as some board members have begun promoting their own personal agendas. Rather than supporting the implementation of the Princeton plan and working to make improvements to it, they have taken countless hours of our administrators' time while modeling a reversal of what has already been researched, debated, and most importantly, voted upon. It is time to move forward and stop looking back. The desire to reverse the Princeton plan seems to come from a longing to recreate an educational experience that mimics the trustees' own experiences of 30 years ago. Creating educational plans to teach students for the future is made more difficult and costly if the district is stuck in the past. This is no longer the same district. Educational requirements and expectations are different. Our student population is more diverse, and taxing people out of the district in order to try to recreate an outdated personal educational experience is reprehensible. Much has been made of the additional costs of the Princeton plan. I would like to make sure the public is very clear. The whole reason the district has been able to add extra classroom supports and have equal class sizes below the cap across grades K through 5 without breaking the budget is because of the cost savings of the Princeton plan. For years, the Hendrick Hudson School District has struggled to bring our elementary schools together. As a former PTA co-president, I observed firsthand and was greatly troubled by the disparities among our community schools. With the Princeton plan, our children and parents have the opportunity to expand their friend circles, have exposure to diverse cultures in our community, and truly become one HUD. PTA fundraising efforts and programs benefit all students, not just those in one building. I recognize and understand the difficulties of multiple elementary buildings for large families. This does not outweigh the benefits of a more efficient educational model that allows for a robust, enhanced educational experience, equal access to educational resources, and the student cohorts needed to provide an equitable education where all students at all ends of the learning spectrum are getting what they need to succeed. Our district is still facing repercussions of the closure of India Point, thanks to the tremendous efforts and difficult decisions made by boards, President Hawkrider, and our administrative team. Taxes have been kept low, and our educational programs have thrived. Reverting back now will not only be hugely disruptive, but will increase the budget. The Board of Ed should be concentrating on the district's strategic plan, the continuing concerns around Indian Point's decommissioning and finances.
Thank you, Lisa.
It's time to move on.
Our next speaker is Jamala Escobar.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. Some of you may know me. I have a first grader and a second grader, so I got FGL and BD. I think it's important to understand that anything historic, you can't do it in 4 or 5 months. It takes a lot of time. And I don't think that the plan should just be thrown away. I do support the Princeton plan, and I do understand people felt deceived the first time. And now certain things still feel deceitful, but I think we need to look at why people felt deceived the first time. My kids' experiences at school and at Mother Connection are just more engaging now that the activities are tailored specifically to age groups. Because of my son's size, in first grade, he was picked on by older kids, picked up bad habits from older kids, and referred to by his color and not his name. It's unfortunate that at 7 years old, he has already experienced comments about his color and his race. There were so few children of color in his class, he knew his classmates were speaking about him. At least now he's with a diverse group of kids from different backgrounds. God bless those of you that have never had to experience this sense of otherism. People making judgments about you based on your color, your race, your name before ever meeting you. I'm sure you all saw a perfect example of that in the Facebook post. Many teachers I know support the plan or they're patient waiting to see it through. The PTA has done a tremendous job, hard job, but trying to really develop great programs across 3 schools. Parents are more engaged in the PTAs and as you can see in the Board of Ed meetings. If we are all one HUD, what is meant by a community neighborhood school? Isn't that essentially what we're trying to promote? We have one school with the middle school and high school. Financially, we cannot forget COVID and Indian Point. We can't conceptualize the financial impact of those 2 factors. The kids have great relationships with people they wouldn't have met for years, met amazing families, and there was so much done to implement this process. I think that it would be re-traumatizing. And I do understand as a parent, there's a lot of decisions we have to make, but I do believe that this could be good because essentially with transitions, that's life. You know, like we gotta do that all the time. Diversity, we're not living in one little community, it's an international community. So what are we teaching our kids? They're gonna go through the same thing in middle school anyway. I think we're missing out on a great opportunity to be different than the other places where it did not work. We shouldn't base what we're doing on another district's failure. Maybe you all should have done better coming out the gate, but now we can improve on that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jeff Gaspar.
Hi there, I'm Jeff Gaspar. I have children in FGL, Furnace Woods, and also the middle school. So I guess, you know, I think we've talked at great lengths about the positive and negatives. And, you know, let me just say a couple things. So, you know, there are people who talk about grade banding creates equity. Grade banding doesn't create equity because the equity is about the school. It's not about the kids who are in the school. So the same inequities can occur regardless whether, you know, if the resources are not properly applied in one school, they're not going to get as many resources. So, you know, whether it's our K1 not getting equity to 2 and 3, the inequities are going to happen if the resources aren't applied properly. And it's up to our administration to make sure those resources are applied properly. You know, that being said, you know, we need to make a decision, I think, on this, you know, soon, because how long do we want our kids to, you know, people said, you know, wait and see what happens, but how long are we supposed to expect our kids to suffer, you know, on 45-minute bus rides twice a day before we say, hey, this isn't working? So, you know, we know there are positives and negatives to the Princeton plan. So what I'm going to suggest to the board is to have a third party, you know, surveying company go out, you know, list the positives and negatives for everybody, you know, you guys have a ton of information on, you know, the effects that this has had on everybody. So what I would say is these are the effects and, you know, how has it affected you? And, you know, seeing these positives and negative effects, you know, which do you prefer? And ask the community, everybody, you know, parents who have kids in the community, parents who don't have kids in the community, or taxpayers. And I just urge the board to act quickly on this, because if we're gonna undo this mess, then, now's the time. That's all.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dana Gore.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm not going to look at anyone because I'll start to lose it. So I'm just going to read what I wrote. I'm here to talk about our current state, and last night I heard a passage that spoke to me and I wanted to share. It's why I rearranged myself hectically to get here. And I hope it speaks to you that are sitting on the board, that are sitting in the audience, and that are watching this or maybe watching the video. Colossians 3:12. I ask you to put on heartfelt compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, accepting one another and forgiving one another if anyone has a complaint against another. And just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must forgive above all. Put on love, the perfect bond of unity. So if it speaks to you, I'm very glad. In January 2020, it was my first time to speak at one of these events. I asked the board then to consider 2 neighborhood schools and 1 intermediate school. I talked about the merits of gathering students sooner because I agree, putting them together in middle school with all the hormones running may not make perfect sense.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah. But also allowing our younger students to have the familiarities of their neighborhoods, to give them the shorter bus rides. And the board never spoke to me after that event, and 2 of you are here tonight. But I did meet with our leader, who told me, I'm sorry, the 2 neighborhood schools, 1 central intermediate school would not save enough. We're not looking at it. However, if the work would have been done by the board then, maybe we'd be at a different place. Maybe we wouldn't be divided. I sat on the Princeton Plan Committee, and while I agree with one of my constituents who are here, that we talked about the possibilities, the wonderful possibilities that could happen, I don't see any merits, I didn't see any merits as well that would be able to come to fruition in a short period of time. We talked about the what ifs that certainly may never come if we always focus on the dollar. So I want to ask you all here today to put your feelings aside, think about our children, and I want to echo what one parent said tonight, that we really do need to think about our curriculum and especially around the English language and how we present to our children what it's like to speak and write in a professional way so that when they carry on into society, they can do the work, Mr. Ryan said, do the work that all of you are doing here today, to be able to strategize and think through it. I do see problems in that curriculum that we have present, and I would love to see that worked on and be spoken about at the Board of Ed meetings. I thank you all for the hard work that you're doing, and thank you for listening to me this evening.
Thank you.
And our last speaker is Tamika Dietrich.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to read what I wrote. My name is Tamika, and I'm a parent in the district. If anyone told me 2 weeks ago I would start a petition, I would have said no way. As a parent, I felt it was important to do so all in the community were aware of what could possibly happen if they didn't take steps to make their voices heard in favor of the Princeton Plan. In talking to a lot of the residents and parents, they were under the impression the board would never overturn the Princeton Plan and was told, no way, we just started this, and it hasn't been a year. Since starting the petition, I am happy to report that we have almost 500 signatures from 18 and older residents, and we are still gathering more on a daily basis. We will be submitting some of our signatures today with our petition. We are hearing a lot of positive feedback and support from the community, and it's heartwarming. One of the most concerning things to come out as we started the petition is hearing a lot of conversations about who pays more taxes, as if that should make the fireman, postal worker, teacher, someone who just wants a smaller home, feel like their child does not deserve the same access to an education where resources are distributed equally across the district. Why should school A have 8 children in a class and school B have 22? Every child in this district, across this district, deserves the same access to resources. A video has been made with notes as if they were fact-based to combat our petition. I can search the internet too and find things to support my claim, but the truth is, This community has lived the community school model, and they are not happy. They are saying with one voice to this board, every child in this district deserves the same access to resources. This district spent a lot of money to implement this plan, and to go back after only 4 months of kids working in the school is fiscally irresponsible. Don't quit on our kids, and please give it time. The old model has many flaws and biases that have been realized throughout this community. To go back to that option is completely unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming tonight. All right, we're moving on to our consent agenda now. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Can I have a second? All in favor? Eric, are you in favor? Okay. All right, where are we at? Superintendent's report? Oh, we have item, yep. All right, I'll give Greg a second to pull up the donation. Great, awesome. New York Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital Center has made a $1,500 donation for school technology programming initiatives. Great, awesome. Can I have a motion to approve the donation?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, now we're at our superintendent's report.
I'm going to keep this brief. We did add to the agenda so the public was aware a pre-K update. Before I turn it over to Margaret, I'll share this little blue handout with the board. This is a subset from Governor Hochul's executive budget proposal. It came out today, and so in your packet. Just gives an update on the executive education portion of the executive budget. Now what will happen is the Assembly and the Senate will deliberate and argue over education funding as well as other funding. So what you have here are sort of big picture priorities, certainly with some funding tied to it. So right now, as it stands, the budget for next fiscal year includes the largest school aid in New York State history. As that process unfolds and as those negotiations take place, we'll be updating our projections as Enrique usually gives those at least every other week, but monthly. We also have learned through the governor's proposal that there's additional pre-K money, but that is for more seats and opportunities, not to increase the per pupil costs. As the board knows, and as those who have been watching us deliberate over pre-K, we're very thankful that the district has been receiving pre-K aid, but for districts in the lower Hudson Valley and certainly Long Island, those per pupil costs or those per pupil revenues do not cover our costs, and we heard a little bit about that 2 weeks ago. But with that, I'll turn it over to Margaret to give an update on pre-K, because I know that was a priority of the board from last meeting.
Good evening, everyone. So just to follow up on what Joe said, we are due to receive much more funding than last year, which is lovely, but the per seat reimbursement remains the same. So that's not really the help we were looking for. That being said, we will have funding for 116 seats for the 23-24 school year. I doubt that we will be able to find enough seats, but we're out there trying. So to that note, the RFP went out on Tuesday. It is due back February 17th. Just as an update to that, we sent the RFP by email to every state-approved child care center in the Hendrick Hudson District, the Peekskill District, the Lakeland District, the Yorktown District, and the Croton District. Be aware that there are daycare centers and childcare centers that are not state approved that we do send our children to. They must be state approved to participate in this process. I personally reached out to the local Hendrick-Hudson folks who are not yet state approved to try to persuade them to reconsider partnering with us. There are barriers to those guidelines that they are not at an option right now to meet. So I will keep you abreast of the responses that we receive. Again, they're due back the end of the day on the 17th, and we'll see what we end up with moving forward.
Why didn't we send it to Austin as well?
Austin's a little far and very oversubscribed for their own community, if you want me to reach out to them. By the way, Carmen posts this, it's a requirement that it be posted publicly. So
I saw
it's in
the
the
RFP
newspaper,
on the
it's
internet.
on the district website, so someone from Ossining could easily apply. I don't think honestly, in the districts that I'm talking about, there will be many people who will raise their hand and say, we'll take some kids. I know Croton, Happy Hearts takes their children. Ossining has long had an internal program. I don't even know how many kids they farm out to local collaborators. I don't know that we'll hear anything from Peekskill. I'm not sure about Lakeland, and Yorktown was a stretch because it is far, but I'd be happy to see if I can
Ossining's a
find
little closer
somebody
than
in
Yorktown,
Ossining.
I was just thinking.
Yeah. Well, and again, it depends on where you are. Some of us work and take our kids with us to a provider closer to their job. I have had a couple of parents that I've spoken to over the year with that. Any other questions about that? I mean, it'll be a little while. What happens is they'll come back with questions. So in the RFP, they're given all the state resource sites to go to so they can make sure that they can meet those regulations. They will additionally ask questions. We have to post those questions so that all the providers could see that. Those are due on the 10th. So we'll know, and just another note related to UPK, as I think the last time we met, we talked about the expansion grant. So we are drafting that grant. I just shared it with my colleagues to read through the first draft, and I have been in touch with our reviewer at the state level to ask some additional questions. I continue to ask if I can use Title I money. I'll ask every year, even though they keep saying no, but it's worth a shot. So that's where we are on the PreK front.
The expansion grant, when would we hear back about that?
It's due the 17th. I'm not sure what the turnaround date is for them to let us know.
I just wonder if we would have information before we have to approve the budget here.
Right. I mean, I would hope that we will, but I'm not positive that that will happen. And as I shared with you, they have said that if we were fortunate and we did receive the grant, then that becomes our reimbursement amount going forward. That's really the difference maker. It's not, believe me, I wish I could give every kid a seat. But as Joe said, the reimbursement in this, and I said this to our reviewer, the reimbursement for a teacher at Lower Hudson, Long Island is just not the same as it is upstate. So it's surprising to me that they haven't really considered raising that, especially with inflation, but nothing yet. Yeah.
To your point about the parent who may take their child to a facility near their work, if a parent speaks with school ABC and they are located in an area outside of our RFP, can they respond singularly for that particular child so that they are able to, maybe the parent needs an earlier drop off and a later pickup, a local UPK program won't work, it would in theory subsidize their cost to have their child educated in that local to their business facility. Are they allowed to subscribe to us for a single seat?
That's
so
a good
parents
question.
can go ahead and utilize that additional revenue source and offset their cost?
That's a good question to ask, and I don't know the full answer to that. We have to give a minimum of 10% to a local collaborator. It could be a seat here or a seat there, and I worked in a district where there were so many collaborators, that's exactly how it ended up. As I said, I did speak with a parent who had a kid in program, took the kid out to be closer to the work, that situation changed, et cetera. There was conversation when this was a proposal at the federal level several months ago with perhaps we're doing this wrong and maybe the $5,400 should go to the parent and then the parent can take that money where they want to go. That's a whole different conversation that they're still rolling around about, and there's a lot of implications for that. Who tracks that? How do we know what's happening? That being said, the other thing I should share with you is that we have surveyed our PreK parents. all our pre-K parents, local, in district, and at the Collaborator. We've gotten a lot of responses. It closes on Friday. I'll be happy to let you know how that turned out. But it was important, and actually a recommendation of the state that we do that, so. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on UPK? All right. We are getting into our presentations section. This is all, the next 3 presentations pertain to our budget for the year. The first one is the debt presentation.
No, we switched it, so
Oh,
Tom
we
can
switched
go.
it.
Yeah, we
Oh,
have to stay
all right,
with
Mr.
Tom.
Baker, with athletics.
The report can start.
Okay.
I'm up.
Are you last, Enrique?
Thank you.
Are you last? Lisa next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, and thanks for having me here tonight. So, presenting the 23-24 athletics budget, and do I have the next slide, or? Okay, good. I just start off all the time, I like to start with our success that we've had and continue to have. We still have approximately 50% of our student athletes in grades 9 to 12 playing a sport. We have scholar athlete teams, Con Ed athletic winners. We have the Gatorade State Athlete of the Year, which came here to one of our board meetings. League champions, sectional champions, our athletes from the community. We're conducting clinics here. We're promoting our athletes, I think, in our programs here. We're continuing to build in stakeholders, whether it's the staff appreciation games, and our teaching staff here at Hendrick Hudson, our Hall of Fame weekend with alumni, elementary students. If you were at yesterday's basketball game, you would have noticed one of our young students participating as the guest announcer for the day, participating in, so we tie that in. And our unified sports continues to build in students from the PPS. And I do want to talk about that, because that's an expansion that we're really building on here at Hendrick Hudson. And it's something that I'm very proud of, and it's one that continues to build. In 2019, we were one of 7 or 8 school districts that pioneered unified sports that spring. After that, I became the Section 1 chairperson for unified sports. I was handed that job, and I welcomed it, and we've continued to grow. Last year, in 2021, we had 13 school districts that participated in it, and this year we're looking at 25 school districts, building up from last spring in 2022 to this year. I'm hoping we have 25, and that's a nice number. We potentially now, with other districts pulling in, will be offering 2 sports for our unified programs, bowling and basketball. So on March 7th, we'll embark on our first bowling season for unified sports. Last year, we had 27 participants, which was nice. We had 10 out of the 27 were athletes. And just for your education on the unified sports, the athletes are termed that. They're the ones with the disabilities on the playing floor, and 17 were partners who were the non-disability. However, the collaboration of them is a very special thing. And as I said to many people, if you come to an athletic event, come to a unified basketball game this spring. It's a great event here for Hendrick Hudson. I expect that 27 participant number to grow this spring. So I did want to touch base quickly on that. Getting to our numbers, I have broken into 2 slides. So the first one is salary contractual lines. The coaching salaries, you can see it, it's the largest increase, and I want to touch base on that one because I've kind of moved some money around from other lines, and that's why this increase is at what it's at 5.7. The staff salaries, which is a 2% contractual, and the overtime, which we use a little bit in the summer specifically for our trainer, Meg Griner, we kept that flat at the 0%. I will make sure I circle back to the coaching salary increase there, because I want to make sure I'm clear on that. The other budgetary lines, we have the equipment line, which we will stay flat at the 0%, and supplies we'll manage with what we have to right at that number as well. The contractual piece, and I'll talk about that a little bit now as I begin to connect our previous slide. The contractual piece, I have the 2% increase. That line really pays for a lot of different things in our athletic department. It pays for the reconditioning of our equipment that we have to make sure we get approved each year. It pays for our facilities such as the Armory in New York City for our track and field team, the bowling alley, the ski mountain, any of the out-of-district facilities that we use for our athletic department, we pay for. Just like everything else in society, these prices have really increased of late. We would definitely need more than a 2% raise. However, what I did, and I'll talk about this even further again, is I slid some of the money over that I would hopefully need it for that to our coaching salaries. So the specific example I have there is we have a merged girls swimming program with Croton Harmon, and in the past, we get paid, I get an invoice from Croton Harmon, and we split the bill for the cost of the program. This year, we took on the payment for one of the coaches in the program because she teaches here in the district, so I wanted to slide that salary slide it from contractual over to the salary guidelines. So that was one of the transfers there. The BOCES increase, as you can see, is 6.38%. This one's out of our control. This is the one, and I'll speak about it a little bit more in detail. We pay for our officials. We pay for a lot of the services that we get here, our local live streaming services, the family ID services, which we register students for all of our athletic programs. So that one is kind of it's out of our hands and what we have to pay for that. We pay for a fee to New York State Athletic Association. We get a fee to Section 1, and some of those costs have increased going into next year. And then our transportation and building overtime, I work closely with Liz Gillio, Anthony Merlini, so we kept that right at the 2%, and we'll manage our best to stay right there. And then putting those two together, the two previous slides, total contractual and the other slide, it turns out to be a 3.7 increase. A lot of that comes from, as I said, the BOCES line, which is out of our control, and then that coaching salary, which I transferred some of the salaries from that. And I want to talk about that now a little bit closer here on the next slide. So the salaries from the coaching salaries that provided a little bit more increase, that 5.7. One is the girls swimming salary, which we transferred from contractual over to that. We've been paying that, it just came from a different line. And I'd like to increase our unified sports and pay those coaches as coaches for the programs. In the past, we've been paying them as chaperones for whatever work they may have done. The last few years, a lot of our money towards unified has come from the grants that came from our Special Olympics that contributed to us because we started the unified sports program here. So now we have to budget for that appropriately. The non-coaching salaries were all contractual. And I'll go to the next one. The increase to the cost in facilities, as I said, out of our control. We send 30 kids to whether it's to the ski mountain or kids to the bowling alley, kids down to the armory, which many of them are out tonight. We have to pay for that. It's out of our control. The girls swimming stipend I've already mentioned. The BOCES line and that's one I like to talk about for people to understand where it comes from. We pay our officials every day when they're at our games. We get assigned our officials through the BOCES offices. Their contract, they're being the officials for Section 1, their contract ends this spring, so last season on their contract. So there will be a new contract for the fall 23 season. So there will be an anticipated increase for all of their fees, whether it's the varsity, JV, or modified levels. We pay fees to Section 1 and fees to New York State Public High School Athletic Association. And as I mentioned earlier, those fees have increased as well. And then the contractual increases I had for the BOCES line, for the building overtime and for transportation. We do our best to be fiscally responsible here, holding the line with the current inventory. We're going to stay at the 0% for supplies. As I said, I work closely with Liz and Anthony. We try to minimize any overtime we have in the buildings for any of our practices or events, our transportation issues. I kept the line at the equipment as well. And the chaperones, we kept that as minimal as possible because those increases I've kind of transferred over to the coaching salaries from the unified as we've been paying in the last few years. So we've tried our best to stay as fiscally responsible as we can. We provide a lot of opportunities for our students here. 31 varsity programs, 15 JV, 17 modified. We have 1 freshman, and now we can say we have 2 unified sports programs. And doing the math today with former fellow math teacher, Coach Bailey, her and I looked at this today and we said, this is still, for the opportunity we're providing, it's still less than 1.5% of the entire budget here for Hendrick Hudson. And I like to think that the opportunities that we give our student athletes and all of our community is well worth that. And I do want to thank all of you for your support and you have continuously given to us and for all of the Hendrick Hudson community. Thank you.
Does anybody have questions for Mr. Baker?
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have any idea how many of our students participate in our athletic program?
I can get that for you. So I can get it. Yes, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can get that.
It's a lot, though.
Yeah. Yes, we do. And even when you tie in the modifieds, which go a little, I had the 9 through 12 number on there. It's even more so. It's been hard the last few years to get that because of certain not having modified seasons with the COVID years, but we're getting past that. I can get that information for you. It's not a problem. Not a problem at all.
I have a question, Mark and Lee. So on the do I understand right, the contract line item is where we took money off of, which is why we see it at 2% only and slid it over to the coach's salary?
Yes,
So the coaches,
it would have been necessary to add more to that, but I don't have to because I slid it over to the coaching salaries.
so the coach's salary would have been 2% roughly, and then plus the differential on the contract?
Yeah, because we were.
Is that number 10,000 on the contractual number that slid over additionally?
It depends, well, one would be a varsity athlete, one would be a varsity stipend for a coach, because we were paying that for this year's girls swimming. And the two new unified systems just have to be negotiated for that, because they're two new positions. So I kind of ballpark that as two JV positions and a varsity. So it probably, 22,000 between the three of them maybe is a good ballpark.
So then the chaperone shows being 0, but we are actually raising it by quite a bit since we're taking 2 chaperone positions away and adding them into that line. I just want to try to, I see what you did and I appreciate it. I just want to get a better understanding of what each line item increased by, rather than just shifting it from bucket A to bucket B.
Understand, yeah. So the chaperones, it's really, that one's hard to predict.
Okay.
It's just hard to predict because it's hard to predict on how far teams go, how large the crowds we're gonna have, incidents that could occur across the section, whatever it could be. It's just hard to predict. That being said, I would have liked to increase it more, but because of where we slid over some of the money to the coaching salaries of the unified, I kept it there, but it's just hard to match that. I understand that you're just trying to get a number on where you're going from year to year.
Yeah.
I kind of was a little bit, hope I answered it for you a little bit.
Sure. If I have additional questions, I'll be sure to ask you.
Okay, you got it.
Good. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
He's probably going one.
Hello, everybody. How are you tonight? I always seem to get the biggest crowds when I present my budget, which I kind of like. I don't feel so by myself up here. So I just, go ahead, Greg, you go to the next one. We every year talk about all the programs we have at Hendrick Hudson. We talk about our sports, how many kids we have in them. And I'm really proud to say that our special ed programs keep our kids in district. We have so many programs that a lot of schools can't afford to have or just don't have the students to have the full programs. We can go anywhere from having basic related services to consultant teachers to special classes. We are so fortunate that over the years the board has been allowing us as a department to work with our K-5 teachers and make programs that fit students. When I entered the district, everybody said to me, we don't have programs for our kids. There's 2 ways they can be serviced. They can be serviced in ICT, or they can be in an ABC class. And if they don't fit in either one, we make them fit. So we made some major changes over the last few years. We're actually getting ready to meet next month to discuss K-5 again. So I think, these are the multi-programs we have. I'm not gonna read them all. I think the ones that are so important this year to touch on is our SAIL 6. So we started with kids that transitioned from the 5th grade up to the middle school who are really struggling. We're giving them double art and double reading and writing and double math periods, which has really seen some growth. So I've been meeting with teachers every 5 weeks talking about data. I started K-5 and just to see the growth that we're seeing. We're adding the 7th grade next year. So it'll be a 6-7 class. It'll look a little bit different, but it'll still be a home base. The other thing that's just amazing for us is our work-based learning program. It's here at the high school. If you've been by the captain's quarters, it looks much different than it has in the past. Our kids are running the IT department, helping Vanitha do some IT stuff. They're out in the community. They work in my office. They work in Frank G in the morning sometimes before students get there. They're at the Buchanan pantry. They're at Old Navy now. Our kids work at Old Navy. They are starting their own coffee shop. It's called the Coffee Cart, so the kids are gonna work on some hours during the day. They'll start from how to budget, marketing, etc. for donations. So these are amazing experiences that most districts aren't doing. SEPTA just started this in Lakeland like 2 weeks ago, so it's exciting. So we're on the same page as Lakeland. So these are great programs that we've been allowed to offer our students here at Hendrick Hudson. Each year, we always talk about numbers. We don't ever really share what's really happening in the classroom. And I'm not gonna read these to you, but these are just stories that the teachers share with you as you walk through and talking about how we're creating mindfulness, not just for our kids, but for our teachers after school if they wanna be there. We're talking about how we have sensory equipment being used by all students. So now every building has a sensory space. Every sensory space, guess what, looks the same for the grade level that's there. So everybody has access to that. The ICT teachers this year, K to 5, actually middle, all the way up through high school, have been trained in PAF, which is a reading program. It's prevention of failure. It's a reading writing program. Our special ed teachers have been doing tons of reading training. The SRA, which is, yes, maybe back when we were in school, SRA was there, but it's been revamped. It's really working with a lot of our students. In the middle school, they're talking about how they're moving kids out of special ed classes, the most restrictive classes, into less restrictive classes. After school clubs with students and teachers. Our TAs, how they have really been able to support the students. The high school has really taken on, you go ahead and Greg, the high school has really taken on, we have a lot of school avoidance students. We're seeing more and more every day. How are we working as a team within the high school? And it's been amazing to see what the teachers have to say and share. Their transition again into less restrictive environments. We're doing some real math classes for our students with disabilities. How do you budget? How do you do this? And all those bullets are there. So we're seeing all of this go into play, and the teachers are so proud of their work. And we're proud of them for all the stuff that they want to do. A lot of this stuff is new, but it's new in the fact that we have a curriculum. It's not just fly by the seat of your pants. So they did a lot of research, and we bought the curriculum. They trained in the curriculum, and they're making gains with our students. So let's get into the numbers that everybody loves to hear about. Head grade, excuse me. So to continue, oh, did you skip on, Greg? Okay, so really when we get to the numbers, we're talking about our initiatives. Let's Get Ready is our K-1 program that we started after COVID because we noticed we had a lot of dysregulated students that were not able to access the curriculum because they didn't have all that early intervention. We moved that up to 4 or 5, and we've seen a lot of growth. I actually met with one of the teachers today that talked to me about her data. The work-based learning transition coach, for transition piece, that means getting them into a college, a job, maybe a BOCES program after school, or transitioning into a work-based learning program for some of our ABC students. She also helps get our OPWDD, which is a service that students get with developmental disabilities. They get that after high school, and Access VR. With that, we need to continue developing our job sites, but we have so many now, it's awesome. We're adding a chauffeur to our budget because we are taking our custodians hold 2 roles. So if we have our own chauffeur that's aligned to our budget, that is aligned with our work-based learning and community-based instruction, CBI, that allows all of our students to access the community. We're looking at and talking about revamping Academy to add special education supports. And we want to continue to build upon our specialized reading and writing programs. We are still seeing needs of the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, and to address current students. We had a data meeting this morning, and we have 5 students who are just not moving. What do we need to do? We need to do a little bit more in-depth stuff. And Margaret and I had a great conversation about our different types of learners and how do we get there, because that's an important piece to all of us. All right, Greg. So as I said at the beginning, we're very fortunate to keep our own kids in. I think when I started, we had about 35 students out of district. Right now, an average out of district placement, if you were to go to BOCES, is about $110,000. So we had about 32 kids out. We have no residential at this point, but a residential student can be about $200,000 a year. So right now, BOCES is about the same. We're keeping 8 out, have 8 out, but that doesn't mean they can't come back. We'll have our annual reviews, but I'm anticipating 8 for next year. Private day school could be your Clearview. It could also be WAC, West District Exceptional Children up in North Salem. It could be your Hawthorne Country Day School. So those are the types of schools are your private day. We have 7 students there currently. No residential, so we have 15 students out. That's as of right now. That does not mean something doesn't change, somebody doesn't move in. That all changes as school gets, so you always budget a little bit more for that. So these are our numbers as of now. And again, please note that the 155 is not including our CPSE students. And it was, we talked on numerous occasions as a board, that number just continues to rise. The number, I think we probably get an average 2 to 3 referrals a day. And that's what we're seeing is an average of 2 to 3 a day. Whether it's a speech, whether it's an OT, or maybe it needs a student needs a full day program. Those are happening every day. And the problem is there's nothing out there for these students. The programs are full, there's no more service providers. So we go high, low, in between, we bargain, can you come in and you can see 2 kids at once. So we're really trying to figure this out. We belong to the Westchester CPSE group. Mrs. Gargiulo, who's sitting in the audience, she attends those meetings, and it's the same story around the county. So we all try to get together and say, should we have a group where we can meet in Peekskill, or can we meet here? So it's really beginning to think outside of the box like we are in schools. 6 to 8, we have 79 students anticipated right now, 9 to 12, 102, for a total of 336 without our CPSE students. So our enrollment, as you can see, the difference is about 2 students. That's 2 students as of 120. That doesn't mean in June I'm not going to have another 20 kids or 20 less. We don't know how many are going to move in. As we know, well, as you may or may not know, we had to increase our 2nd grade section this year because of the number of 2nd graders that moved in. And we have 3 sections of 5th grade where last year we had 2. So it really depends on the numbers. It depends on how many families move in and if they have children with disabilities. The next slide is our budget summary of 2 years. So as you can see, the biggest increase is with our teachers. I've asked for 2 teachers, one at the high school if we go to the academy, and one at the elementary school based on the number of CPSE students. That does not mean that we will utilize those staff members. It means that I need to budget them just in case. We could have no students come in kindergarten that are classified and only need related services. That could happen. But we have to be prepared in case we do need to add a teacher. I don't want to say, Enrique, by the way, I need another whole teacher in another benefit package because. So that's why we budget ahead. That's why we have 2 teachers. Teaching assistants and aides, as you can see, that was a big number. It's a big change from last year to this year. And I will tell you that you have all received an email. After I did a deep dive with Enrique when he returned on Monday, 23 people were incorrectly labeled. They were labeled my people. So at that point, I think at one point, Enrique, you had like a 48% increase there, which is not accurate. Again, this is when kids move in, we have to give them the aids if it comes with them on their IEPs. We up the section of 2nd grade, we up the section of 5th grade. So when you up a section, you gotta have a teaching assistant with it. If you have to up a self-contained class, you need a teaching assistant. It could be an aide, it doesn't always have to be a teaching assistant. So that's where that number comes from. We dropped in equipment. We've basically gotten most of our classrooms fitted with flexible seating and anything they need. I always have to have money in reserve for my PTs and OTs. If they need a specialized equipment, if I have a student come in and they need a special stand or a special seating, we need to have that money readily available. So that's why we went down. There's no increase in materials and supplies, contractuals. Hospital tutoring, we've had quite an increase this year in hospital tutoring, so we pay the educational piece of that. What that looks like is they contract with an educational consultant that goes into the hospital and teaches the students. If it's a high schooler student, they get 2 hours. If it's elementary, they get 1 hour. However, as of July 1st, the regulations change. It's 2 hours for elementary and 3 for high school. So we'll see an increase in that number as well. That tuition line doesn't go up. Related services for contractual went up 20,000. We have to, again, it's keeping up with what we buy outside, whether it's something from a speaker, some professional development. That has been huge. We've got to keep our teachers up to date, and that's spending money at conferences. Margaret doesn't cover my conferences. I cover my own conferences. Tuitions to other public schools, so we send a student to Yorktown and we send a student to Pleasantville. So that is that money. Private schools, we talked about Clearview. Services from BOCES, again, went up 15%, and that will also, if you look at the asterisk, is the BOCES, LPN, and RN. So I know Jeremy asked some really good questions about the BOCES, RN, and LPN and why we needed to have them because we have our own 5. Well, I'll give you an example. Last week, we had a nurse out for the whole week due to illness. I had the BOCES nurse cover her, and then I had a field trip go out. I had to cancel my field trip because I can't send the LPN on a field trip because of medication that are specific to students, and she can't administer them. So typically, my RN would go out, the LPN would float. They know all of our kids, they float for the 5 buildings, and they can fill in for all of our absenteeisms. When we came back from COVID, we could not find nurses. I would have to, the building principals would call Johnny or Susie's mom and say, listen, we don't have a nurse today. You can either send Johnny in and monitor from home, or you keep Johnny home. And the feedback I got from parents was, what's going on? You're right, what's going on? So that's when we came up with a plan that we would bring in the RN and the LPN because they can circulate and help cover when people are out. Not that it's frequent, but we have field trips going out. We also have times that we have to do vision screenings, hearing screenings, and we need someone to service those students. And as we recall, I think I was sharing with Jeremy earlier, we had 10 different nurses go through the high school last year, 10. We couldn't keep a nurse last year. So, over the last 2 years maybe. But the bottom line is, these have helped us and kept us out of issues with having kids not able to come to school because we didn't have nurses there. Related services from BOCES is if we get OTs, PTs, if when we're sending kids to BOCES, if they get OT, PT, speech, vision services, hearing services. Again, BOCES is a general 3% increase that way. And then transportation is an increase due to our chauffeur. So a total increase of 6.8% in our overall budget. When you go to our revenues on the next page, you're looking at about $2.5 million as revenue. And you're talking about an IDA grant, which is your federal grant. 619 is a very small grant. Those are CPSE kids. That's about $22,000. It pays for what we have to pay through the county and part of our secretary. The 611, which is 5 to 21, these are estimated numbers, so please note that I worked with our people for estimated. 614,946, most of that goes to salaries and what we're required to pay to the out-of-district providers too for our public school students and our private day. STAC is the high cost that we get. So the year I came, I believe it was, Enrique, that we didn't do STAC for many years. The person before me wasn't doing STAC. We got over $1 million in STAC, and that was great. So now we're all caught up, and we're getting about $150,000 in STAC. What that is a high cost. So if you have a child in your building or in BOCES or somewhere else, and they're more than 65,000, I believe our threshold was last year, you would get a percentage of that back. So that's for your CPSE kids and your school-age children. Tuition is about 1.5. I believe it's more than that, but we try to keep it very low in case a kid leaves in the middle of the year. We don't want to say we guarantee that money. And about $200,000 for our ICT skills, special class kids that come into the 12s or actually participate in our ICT. So like Mechanico and Garrison, and there's one of the small districts, Haldane, they send us kids that they don't have programs. There's not enough students there. So we do get a lot of their students that come to us. Our IDA grant, the expense, as I said, there's professional salaries, purchase services, BOCES, we don't take anything out of the CPSE grant for BOCES. The $15,000 for BOCES. Services is usually like, it could be a consultant, it could be professional development, anything that deals with special education. All right. Any questions?
We want to start?
I'll start. I have a question. So
Yes.
I love that we've added STEM at the elementary.
I'm sorry, what?
STEM at the elementary level. Is there any thought to putting special ed teachers in those classes? Because I realize science is part of the curriculum, and it's just an overwhelming concern that I have. that when the children go to STEM, it's heavy curriculum that they need to learn, they get standardized testing on it, and they don't have that teacher there. What is the professional, way that we manage science in elementary?
So you have two trains of thought, okay? So when you talk to one building, they figured it out, they've done what they need to do. Another building is, I need help, I need help. So we've done release time, we've done other things. Is there a thought that we'd put a special ed person there? We could put a teaching assistant in there. If we put a teacher in there, then I'm gonna have to ask for 2 more teachers.
Wait, say that
So
again.
we could put a teaching assistant in there who can work under the direction of the classroom teacher, of the STEM teacher.
Right? There are TAs in the
No, I understand that, but when my students go, when the special ed students go,
Okay.
a second teaching assistant can go. That's one option. The other option is that you can add 2 more teachers to cover that. So you're talking 150,000 easily just on salaries without benefits to add to that. So you have 2 options, we have made, I think CADA 2, they have figured out their systems and how it works. 4, 5, I believe, they figured it out with release time. And I think that's where you need that extra teaching assistant.
In the older.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
It was my understanding that the TA from the special ed or ICT class, I'll say, go.
On top of the
So there are
section,
two
so there's
TAs.
2 TAs in there.
Right,
Two
with the
TAs and a
STEM
teacher.
teacher.
Yeah.
Yes. And right now, the teacher, the science STEM teacher, is collaborating with special ed teachers to modify the curriculum for those students in one school. In another school, the teacher is dual certified. And in the third school, they figured that out. They were meeting without anybody saying, hey, guys, you should do this. So,
I was just curious.
No, I totally understand your question. I think the biggest concern will be the 4 or 5 building, right? Because K1's fun, it's all hands-on
Yeah.
kind of thing. 2, 3 is still kind of fun, but when they go from 2 to 3, it gets a little
Yeah.
bit more difficult. But they figured it out. I actually spoke to my special ed teachers and asked them what they needed. They're like, no, we've already done it.
Oh, great.
And I was actually there today, first thing in the morning, and you watched Kathy and my 2 special ed self-contained teachers. They were planning for the first half hour of school.
Awesome.
So I think they've got it figured out. I think we need to talk more and delve deeper into the 4 or 5.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
So the TAs, is that I'm confused, is it a true increase or is it an increase on this line item and we're gonna see a decrease somewhere else further in the
Yes.
budget?
That's what you'll see.
Okay.
So they were, well, I can't answer that because I don't do that chart, but
Okay.
I'm sure that guy over there could. Because when I went through it, when he was giving me numbers, I'm like, they're not accurate, Enrique. So he went back through and we went person by person by person. And he reassessed where things would go. So there's a decrease, I believe, in the gen ed side and an increase in the sped side.
When we get there, Enrique, can you point that out for us?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was one question. And the other one is, how many nurses do we have now and how many are we budgeting for next year?
We have 5 in our general budget. Okay, but in my BOCES line, that line there in the sped budget, we're adding an LPN and a nurse and an RN.
Have we considered bringing them in-house and just hiring them in as Hen employees? Would that be less expensive?
I would have to defer to Enrique, but I'm going to probably say no because they got a huge raise last year. And the aid on it.
Let's say that we are correct on $150,000. That's what we budget for the RN and LN. We get, let's say 30%, to make it simple, 33% back from BOCES. Our total cost is $100,000. I think that nurse to with benefits and everything will add to 130 to 140. So, and it would be only 1. So we're going to see if next year it's a lot more than 150, then we can bring it back to you guys and say, well, instead of being 150, it was 250. Then maybe at that point it made sense. But with the estimate of 150, definitely it's not worth having our own employee.
Thank you.
I have a follow-on question to
Yes.
that.
Is there an additional expense to the contractor outside of this amount paid to BOCES? So with some of the nurses we have today, we pay BOCES a dollar amount, we pay a third party some delta, whatever that range is?
So yes, so let me answer that question. So we have a one-to-one nurse for a student that moved in 2 years ago, rides the bus to and from home, and is an BOCES student. So that nurse gets an extra $5 an hour that we have to pay, because to keep that nurse, there's a BOCES finally set their rate, so it was appropriate. So BOCES rate was down here. And at that point, nurses were making up here, right? So we had to figure out that happy medium, and we would negotiate, we'd do the best we could. So there's 2 agencies we use. One is PreK, the other is Maxis, I think, Maxim, something like that. So whoever gets the best price, then they have to sign a side contract with Joe that we would pay this and we have this. So it's about $5 for the nurse extra pay that we would pay $5 an hour.
So it's only gonna be $5 an hour more per nurse on top of this BOCES line item?
Correct.
Or this BOCES line item already accounts for that?
It already accounts.
Thank you.
Yeah, yep,
We're hiring a chauffeur for next year?
yes.
So what are we doing this year?
This year I'm paying out of my budget for transportation. So when our students go out, I think you don't have a chauffeur, they pull the custodians and our bus drivers like we were going out on a field trip. Just like if anybody went out on a field trip. So now if we added our own chauffeur, they can be doing multiple bus things during the day with students across the district.
And the
Wow, Erica did that.
The chauffeurs are paid on an hourly rate, so if she only needs it for 3 hours,
It's cheaper.
it's much cheaper.
So what we'll do in September, we'll make September, October, November. Everybody will make their calendar. We'll give that, and then we'll start again, December, January, February, do a 3-month calendar. That way they know when we need them.
The only question I had that I wrote down was the Sales 6 program.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I know what that is.
Oh.
I feel like maybe I should know what that is, but I don't know if I do.
It's just it's the final level. Kids are 17 or 18 when they go upstairs. We call it upstairs because they have upstairs and downstairs. So it's a 12-1-1, so we make it a little bit bigger because we have to get them used to, because they'll be there till they're 21.
So we have it we're gonna put it at the middle school.
We already have, that's ABC. So we have Sales 6, Sales 6, I'm sorry, I did Sailor. Sales 6 is a 12-1-1 class. So those were the kids that transitioned from 5th grade to 6th grade that had big discrepancies, and we didn't have the right program for them. So we created the Sales 6 program.
We're gonna roll that up to 7.
Roll it, so it'll be a 6-7, but the schedule will look different.
Okay. New position.
Yes.
It's on the district page. Do you wanna talk about that?
Oh, the mental health?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can. So I call it a mental health clinic. So where I came from upstate, we have mental health and we have doctors and dentists in our schools. So they would rotate buildings and we wouldn't have to send kids to doctors and dentists. There's no more excuses to miss school, right? So Joe and I got approached last spring from Student Assistance Council Association to come and talk about this grant. So we said, sure, great, wonderful, we'll do it. So we find out in June or July that we had been accepted. It's a 1-year grant, which we're hoping it'll continue, and we're partnering with Bedford. So Bedford has 3 days and we have 2 days. Karen started yesterday. We have 12 slots for any of our students. It's more like an out of district. So referral. So it's like a referral if we were to make it to a hospital or to a counseling center. So Karen can see kids throughout the school day. She can meet with parents. Her hours are from 8:30 to 4:30. There's a whole referral process that we would follow on the inside of our school. So we would have the parents reach out, here's our referral to them. Then once we got everything done, we really don't set her up with kids. The Student Assistance Council does. What we did find out on Tuesday is that Karen can only see 13 and older students. I said to Joe, I don't remember this in our grant. So I called Ellen today again, and I finally got Beverly, who's another person I talked to, and she said, well, we're only adolescents. I said, adolescents is like 11 and up. She goes, but we're only approved for 13 and up. So what I said to her is, I need you to go back to the state and see if you can be approved to work in 2 buildings. 1 day in the middle school, 1 day in the high school.
I said, because this woman can stay till 4:30. There's hours outside of the school. If parents can't make it in, they can come and see her. And I said, I can't have a high school kid somehow get to the middle school. So she was supposed to get back to me today. I didn't hear from her, so don't worry, we'll follow up tomorrow. But she also has, which I think is the biggest thing for our district, is access to a psychiatric person. So a psychiatrist will also consult with the family and the student, because a lot of our kids can't get the psychiatric need they need, the psychiatric help they need. So we have been having to find people. And having this program aligned with that has been fabulous. So if we would have known that she could only see 13 and older students, it's some of our 8th graders, but it's mostly our high school, we would have just placed her in the high school. That being said, I'm hoping tomorrow Beverly can give me some good news, and then I work with Anthony and find a space for her, which will be really good news for us. And it's a great resource to the district, so families don't have to try to find someone to get into, because that's our biggest problem right now.
Will virtual be an option for the parents that can't get there during the day but want to participate in the offering?
I definitely know the psychiatrist is virtual. I don't know if Karen is virtual. They make their own rules. We basically house them. They can't use our phones. They can't use our laptops or anything. She can't have our email. So because it's the Office of Mental Health, they have strict guidelines.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, your turn. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I have to be the last one like that. Hopefully you're asleep and we move fast. I want to discuss a little bit the capital budget, but before that, as always, I want to thank the high school or middle school art department because they make a difference in my boring presentation. So thank you for both the art department in the high school and the middle school. And today the topic is the debt profile of the district. The debt profile starts with the capital debt. The capital debt is the money that we raise when we do a capital project and we pay it over between 7 and 18 years. For example, we do 7 years when we do a capital project that it's technology. Technology basically lasts 7 years, so I like to match my asset with my liability. But the rest is about 18 years, which is infrastructure or any improvements that we do to our facilities. For example, the 2011 capital project was a small project that back then the administration decided to do after the defeat of the big project. It was mainly infrastructure and septic tanks and things that we have to do that are very important, but we don't like to talk about it. That was a $4.65 million project. The maturity is 25, 26. And for next year, we'll have to pay $402,000. The 2016 is exactly what I was saying, technology, infrastructure, and also BOCES. The 18 component districts from PNW BOCES were responsible for also getting the money for them to keep their facilities updated. So back in 2016, they came to the 18 districts and said we need to do a big capital project, and we were going to do the technology and infrastructure. So we put together the $6.2 million that included the technology, the infrastructure, and the BOCES portion. Like I said, the portion of technology that, if I'm not mistaken, was like close to $1 million, we're finishing paying it next year. BOSE is the following year, and then the infrastructure on 35, 36. For next year, the total payment is close to $315,000. And finally, the 2019 capital project that we just finished, it's $18.5 million, and the maturity is next year because if you remember, I told you that I wanted to do bond payments until we get a higher state aid. Our state aid jumped from 14%, is jumping from 14% this year to 33% next year. So next year I'm paying the $1.1 million, and very likely next year we'll discuss and we'll do an 18 or 17 year capital project bond, because then next year we'll get 33% state aid, and the following year I'm assuming that it's going to be another 10, because that's when they looked at the second reactor that went off and the second pilot that went off. So that's the idea about what we're doing with the $18.5 million bond that matures next year. Next. Every year we do transportation bonds. If you remember, every year we ask you to vote for the budget, and then also for buying buses for our transportation department. The way we finance the buses is through 5-year bonds. Every year we do a 1-year bond. We pay a fifth of the payments. So every 5 years, one goes out, and then the next one comes in. In 2021, we had extra money, and we decided to pay down 4 cap bonds, and that's why this year we only have 2 to pay for next year, the 21-22 and the 22-23. And obviously the 23-24 we don't pay until the following year. So the total payment for the bonds are $205,000. Computer leases, we do basically the same. Here we have a lease with Chase. Every year we have a 6-year cycle. Every 5 years is one of the buildings that we buy computers for the buildings, and I say computers because it used to be computers, now it's Chromebooks sometimes. It depends on the needs on what the principal decides they need in technology. So we have a six year cycle, 1 year for each of the buildings, and 1 year to upgrade the software for all the computers in the district. So here you have, for example, BV in 1819, the amount was $300,000, and now obviously the high school that is a lot bigger last year was $658,000. In 21-22, we did the switches, the room, the alert, everything that we needed. So these are the payments that we have for next year. And then finally, we have what I called our other debt. The first one is the EPC. The EPC, we did a $2.6 million EPC in 2011-12. And the EPC, we're paying $221,000 next year, but that gets paid out of savings from the EPC. So the idea, and we're working on a new one now, is that We borrow the money to buy, for example, in the one that we're doing next year, to buy light bulbs, LEDs. So with the money that we buy the LEDs, we make the savings, and with those savings, that pays for the bond. So the idea is that next year we're going to start with a new EPC, because actually contractual with the company that does it, if we don't get the savings, they have to pay us the difference. And then back in 2014-15, we had huge tax accessories, if you remember, after the big financial crisis, the real estate in the whole country went down, and your taxes were here, so everyone was doing tax accessories because of the value of their houses went down, the commerce went down, so suddenly, we were hit with $822,000 of tax accessories that we didn't have the money. So we had to do a bond that matures in 2 years. Next year we're paying $94,000. So the total debt, and this is the good news, the total debt for this year that we're going through is $4.9 million. And next year is going to be $3 million. So basically it's going to be $2 million less. And the discussion that we've had in facilities is that's the $2 million that we want to use on a yearly basis for our next capital project without increasing taxes. And that's the discussions that we're having now in facilities, because we have an opportunity of, if I'm not mistaken, and I would need to redo the calculations with the new interest rates, but what in November our bankers told us is with $2 million of yearly payments plus our 33% state aid, we could do around $35 to $40 million in capital projects and not increase the tax levy for the community.
What percentage?
Next year is 33. Okay. Again, the following year, I'm hoping that it will go up another at least 10%. This time it went from like 13 to 33, but it was the big jump. I'll say we're going to be around 40% when all is said and done.
Okay.
Also, the good news that we found out from the governor today is that our state aid, if it stays as she says, it's going up $300,000 compared to the numbers from the legislature. So we're moving on the right direction.
This for next year?
For next year, yes.
Okay.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Enrique.
Oh, okay. All right, so we're through our presentations. Do we have anybody signed up for audience comments on agenda items?
Hi. So I really appreciate Mr. Baker trying to keep the budget reasonable, but I really have a lot of questions that he left about retention for coaches. What is that retention like? Is it because of a successful program? Is it because kids are getting recruited into college? Is it mental health of our players? Is it players returning to their sports for the next year? Because a lot of kids didn't return to a lot of sports this year. You know, I personally feel that we should be doing a better job with coaches. If, you know, you're not performing and you're not bringing back your players and you're not providing a positive mental health environment, then we need to question, why are they still here? These are not tenured positions as far as I know, are they? I know that we try to hire in district. If we can't, then we go out of district. So if we're going out of district, then maybe we could get to a better pool of coaches and not coaches that call our players losers and tell them they all should just quit. You know, I really think that we need to start behaving as one hen hut in the high school level with our sports and creating a parents booster club and getting parents together so it's more of a cohesiveness instead of this sport and that sport and this sport and that sport. And listen, we've got some great sports. I just went to Dallas with our cheerleaders and I don't even have a cheerleader. So we've got some really great programs here, but I think there's also a big difference between our sports that are behaving like programs and our sports that are behaving as one-offs. I've spoken to parents in district about this. Most parents would love to see a survey go home at the end of every sports season asking about how your sports experience was and if you felt that your child learned. We have a lot of kids are leaving our district for sports, which really to me is crazy because like, why wouldn't they want to stay? And as a youth sports leader and the vice president of the Little League, I'm having a really hard time selling hen hut sports to parents. I get this kind of like look like, well, yeah, I don't think I really want my kid playing baseball because I really don't know if I want my kid playing in the high school. Or we're gonna, you know, we're not gonna play basketball for hen hut. We're probably gonna send him to Kennedy or to Stepinac. So, you know, when we're talking about keeping kids here, I think we should really be looking at, you know, why are they leaving our district for sports and why aren't they returning? That's that. And I have a really quick question, Lisa. You mentioned we've got kids coming from Mechanical Hills, Haldane, and Garrison for out of district?
You can ask the question, we can take it down and Lisa.
All right, I can only imagine what that bus ride must be like for our most vulnerable population. So, you know, when we're all up here debating bus rides for kids in district, we really need to get into consideration our bus rides for these kids. And, you know, we're sending our own kids out of district for those are long bus rides. So I really think it's kind of a moot point when we're talking bus rides. We're putting vulnerable children on bus rides for much, much longer. And those kids are great and they're doing fine and they've been doing this for a long time. So thank you.
Rachel, can I clarify your question? I'm sorry. The children that we're bringing from Mechanical Hills,
yes.
Your question is their bus ride here?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty long bus ride, right?
But it's their choice, I think. Lisa, if you could just do a little research and get back to Rachel, that'd be great. Thank you.
Any more? I'll be quick. I'm fully in support of PreK. I think it brings value to our district, and if we're looking for ways to continue to elevate our district, besides at the high school level of keeping our students here for sports, and my husband is on the Little League board with Rachel, so I highly hope that our sports programs continue to succeed, but I love PreK, and this is just an idea, and I don't want to run it, and I don't want to organize it. But I think that maybe a workshop for the providers that are not non-state approved or need to get state approval, maybe we can ask like a Happy Hearts or another approved Rising Star come and do a workshop with those other neighboring nursery schools that can maybe be elevated into state approved level so that we can increase those seats. And it would be great if we can remind the public, did we turn away students last year that were unable to come into the pre-K program? So did we have an abundance amount of individuals or did everyone make it in? And another thing to think about for future forecasting is when parents do register, if we can ask a question that's optional, they don't have to say, they don't have to give the answer, but would you be in need of pre-K next year? So you continue to forecast your trends of how many people would participate in the program to help the board make a decision of whether or not they want to keep it. The other part is around the debt, Enrique. So when would we see the information around the renovation for BV? Would it have been presented here, the renovations for the BV cafeteria auditoria? Would it have been part of this debt presentation or will it come in that future, one of those future budget presentations?
So then just clarify.
I don't wanna get into back and forth.
Yeah.
We will get you, ask all your questions.
I'll talk to you.
Yeah, no, just clarifications, for the public when they can see that information too, because some people might be interested in that. And of course, love to hear that we have possible capital improvement projects that could be done. So you just said there's possibilities we could add it. So I think that's awesome, and I hope we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all of the speakers? Okay, great. Committee reports? Do you have committee reports this week?
Policy.
Where is it? Oh, I lost my whip.
This one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Policy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's in you.
So is there any committee reports?
Safety, I don't know if there's a lot to report.
You can tell me the gym.
Oh, yeah, it's your.
So we had a collaborative effort from a handful of different people on the team, and we had a whole bunch of really hardworking people that jumped into action and were able to sort of help us work with one of our providers to help improve the PA system in the gym. So they installed, they literally like a moment's notice, I think on a Thursday or a Friday, they found out it was possible that we were going to receive this item several weeks, maybe months earlier than had been anticipated. And the team got together, ran the wiring over the weekend. I think it was the long weekend in January. And by Tuesday, the PA system was installed and operating. It was a board, strobe light, and a PA system sort of combined. And that athletic area was one that had been flagged as deficient in communication from the emergency system as well as the PA system. So that was a really big win, and it was a lot of really hard work from a series of different people who came together to make things happen. So it was really greatly appreciated.
Just to elaborate, that's a safety mechanism. So when there's some sort of emergency, if you're in the gym, there's loud noise, the PA's not very good, there's now a message board that's screaming at you what's going on. So.
And there's grants that have been written and that are out there to get more of the strobe lights and message boards in the dome and in the cafeteria where they're similar but not as great of a need. Similar issues, but not quite the
This
same.
was a nice big win and a great one for our student safety.
Just a quick question. I know Eric has mentioned this before, that there was an issue in the choir room, right? And in the music room where they couldn't hear. So just want to make sure that's being addressed.
It's on the, yes, it's on the list for you to get, I think, the message board.
Yeah, so we're doing.
But I think
radio.
to solve that in the short term, I believe they have already addressed that. This was the last hole. If you would, the downstairs area, they found a way to maneuver or manipulate it with the VoIP over IP phones, where they can utilize that speaker system that's connected into the same broadcast. So they're able to now put sound into those rooms without using the traditional PA, because a lot of it was like old wiring, it's been split. There was not like the boost capability to bring it down into after so many splits of all of these years. So they're using the voice over IP system and the Ethernet to deliver the message down there now.
That's great. Thank you.
It doesn't necessarily solve the announcement issue, but it solves the safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think something similar for the auditorium as well, right? They're working to get that same thing in the auditorium.
I have a quick update. Let's do a question about this.
No, I was just going to ask about the auditorium and how the audio was going, but that's separate.
Go ahead. That's a good question.
The wiring is done. We order all the mics and everything that we agree, so we're waiting for it. Unfortunately, today we had a call with Claire that we don't think is going to be here but we're getting everything ready. What we are going to try to do is to connect all the mics and everything that we're going to rent to our own speakers. And I think next week, Claire, the person who we rent from, and Sean, the company, will have a meeting here in the auditorium to test everything and see if we can come through our own speakers.
Okay. All right, but it's not going to be done by the show?
That part, no, that's what I'm saying. The mics, we don't think, our own mics, we don't think they are going to be here by the show.
Okay.
But the kids will not know the difference. It's going to be the
You're gonna
same
have
mic, the same
different mics,
everything.
but it's gonna pipe through our system anyway. So
That's
there's a
what-
separate
that's-
amplifier and receiver.
Exactly.
Well, no, our amplifier, separate receiver.
Uy, you're asking.
All right, I'm sorry.
It's too technical.
All right, no, good.
The one thing I hear is.
I'm glad that we're getting the right. something.
Is these mics are the same that what we're buying, and they are coming here to see if they can connect it to our own speakers.
Okay, good.
So the
Thank
kids
you.
will.
So the kids won't know a difference.
No.
We'll have a good sound system for the show.
Oh, no.
Projector's
doubt.
not gonna be in place yet though, but we knew that.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Show goes on.
Show goes on. Show must go on.
I just wanted to mention something. I worked with Carmen and Greg on something that's strategic plan, Pillar 4, shared decision-making had come to Carmen about streaming, right? So we stream our video and you can't, and after it's posted, 2 days later, 1 to 2 days later, you don't really know what sections we're on. So Greg was able to do it going forward for a very, very small fee where it's incrementally. So when we switch topics, it'll show up on our YouTube channel.
That's cool.
So thank you, Greg.
Oh,
Nice
Greg.
job.
Awesome. Any other new business?
I do have
Yeah.
one more question.
Yeah.
So I think that last year I made this comment too, is that we get these presentations on budget about sports, about that. Can we do one for music and art? Like, I know that we don't have this, right? We talked about that
We talked about
last
it,
year.
you're right.
I would really love to have a
We'll
presentation.
add it with curriculum and instruction. The next board meeting is technology. If I can get together the music teachers and everything, we'll do it for the next one. If not, I promise you with technology.
Yeah, I would love to see, you
Yes,
know, a
yes,
summary of
and
all the accomplishments of
honestly-
music over the year.
Yes.
Right, all
I
the great things we did, what we're spending in the different schools.
Yes.
You know, and maybe have a discussion like, why don't we have a single leader for music for the district?
And we do,
Music
by
and
the
art for the
way.
district. So if we do, that person should be presenting that, right?
Okay, so let me talk to him tomorrow and see how fast we can get our act together.
That'd be great, thank you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
I'm done.
Awesome. Anybody else new business? Before we move on to our first reading of our new policy. Everyone's good? Yeah. All right, Corey, would you like to read our new policy?
Sure. I don't know if the whole policy has to be read, but I think, you know, let me read a good chunk at the beginning. And
Yep.
then if someone wants to waive the rest of the
And if
reading.
there's important parts of it that we should touch on, we can do that.
Yeah,
Yes.
happy to do that, but I think it's the beginning that's the most important.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so for section 8100 safety, code 8121.1, adopted, the Board of Education recognizes that the use of opioids can lead to overdose and death of district students and staff. The board wishes to minimize these deaths by the use of opioid overdose prevention measures. The signs and symptoms of opioid overdose are shallow, slow, erratic, or no breathing, slow, erratic, or no pulse, snoring, choking with a gurgling rattle, unconsciousness, minimal responsiveness, limp body, unresponsive to painful stimuli, pinpoint pupils, blue or purple lips or fingertips, pale blue, gray, or ashen skin, clammy face. The district will display these signs and symptoms in school buildings with instructions to contact emergency responders. The district will provide training to all staff and students on the signs and symptoms of an opioid overdose. Then it goes into the administration of opioid antagonists pursuant to non-patient specific order. This is very technical, so someone can waive the reading here if they want to. The Board of Education approves the following program for use of opioid antagonists on students or staff suspected of having opioid overdose, whether or not there is a previous history of opioid abuse. Opioid and
We have a motion to waive the reading.
someone's got to move.
Second?
Okay, is there any other section you would like me to read?
I think it might be more helpful, because I read this through and I'm like, oh, what are we doing here? I think it might be more helpful if we speak to it. I don't know if someone on safety or someone on policy wants to kind of elaborate for the community and the folks at home on what kind of urged us to move in this direction and how it's gonna work. I don't know if you wanna share.
Yeah, I can share the baseline
Yeah.
from this policy came from the New York State School Boards Association and some interest that the policy committee had from another policy from a neighboring district that our school physician helped write. So this is a little bit of NISBA and a little bit of a school policy that exists in our region. Essentially what the policy does is it provides the opportunity for any staff member beyond a school nurse to be trained in a New York State approved, receive the New York State approved training to be able to administer Narcan. And that training will be a volunteer basis. It will be open to any staff members. Certainly we're going to target and highly encourage certain staff members to consider because our nurses are not here 24/7, but our coaches are here late, our club advisors, our custodians and maintenance crew. So we will open this up. The training is free. You can partner with any number of agencies from your local hospital to the county Department of Health. And sometimes you receive additional Narcan prescriptions for every individual that gets trained. But what this policy does is it creates the opportunity for other staff members beyond a school nurse to be trained and to be given permission to administer in a school setting. And that is certainly broader than the existing law. Right now, it's just school nurses. And so what a lot of school districts have been reviewing are the options to provide training and really provide the cover and the support from a policy level that they're acting in the best interest of students or adults for the sake of their health while on school property.
I also want to add a little bit of context in that the policy committee and Joe worked very closely together with a sense of urgency on this, that we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to wait for a policy to be approved before we can get more Narcan into the schools. Mm-hmm. So I think, what we agreed on was, even though we were waiting on the policy so that it could be a broader audience of administrators of Narcan, we were still getting the Narcan to the schools, to the nurses, so that if there was an OD, could have happened any time between the time when we got this policy drafted and now, or when it's finally approved, kid can OD. We want to have Narcan in the school, and Joe was instrumental in helping us get that done. So, it was really.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, Joe, can you expand on the resolution we passed earlier tonight and how it's different from this policy?
Yeah, so the resolution we passed tonight was recommended by our attorneys to allow nurses to administer immediately based on need. So while the policy goes through its state education bureaucracy, and there sometimes is a good reason for bureaucracy, we thought it was important to previously approve that resolution that gives the nurses the extra benefit or the extra comfort and recognition that they can administer Narcan immediately. So our school physician has signed the standing order. Narcan has been ordered, probably should be here tomorrow if it isn't already. And what this policy will do is we'll bring the policy back in 2 weeks for final reading, and then this will allow us to kick off training for other staff that are interested beyond school nurse.
Is this going to be in all 5 of our school buildings?
It will be, yes, in all the school buildings, because all of the nurses will have received the training.
And this is for the nasal disseminate, right? This is for the nasal Narcan. This is not for the one that's intravenously.
Correct. On the second page, it talks a little bit about the difference. Maybe it's the nasal and the muscular. So it will be both. it can be both, I should say. Only nurses can administer the non-nasal.
And I think we might have touched on the last meeting. I think BOCES was offering a training at no cost for any staff members in their region that wanted to sign up for this, and then the completion, it provided each person that successfully completed the course some number or a singular dose of Narcan or something. And we had an issue recently, right? Not us, but in Westchester, where a student in a high school in Westchester County had ingested fentanyl, but unknowingly, and they had Narcan on hand. And so it's not just for people that are abusing opiates, it's for exposure. I think about a week later, there was a police officer in Lower Westchester who was exposed in the police headquarters and had to have Narcan administered to save, I don't know if it was his or her, but the officer's life. So I think it was an important thing to have, and I'm grateful for everybody coming together and bringing that into the building. So thank you, Joe. Thanks for taking that is a serious topic to get done.
So this will, as long as they're, and I might be jumping the gun, you see Erica's ready to.
It might be. There's one line here that I don't know if it's exactly right yet, because there's no context for it, I don't think, about the signs. It says the district will display these signs and symptoms in school buildings. But I think something about the signs being displayed has to be mentioned before this paragraph. Am I right? Did you read it? It's the 8th line on the.
It's on the first page, right? The district will display these signs and symptoms in school buildings?
Yeah, so we'll receive from either the County Department of Health or New York State Department of Health. Signs, posters, sort of like we received when.
I know, it's just
pandemic.
it's clunky.
If we're gonna get picky, I just have one little thing.
It's clunky wording, yeah.
It does say that we are going to provide training to all staff and students on signs and symptoms of opioid overdose. Are we going to hold to that and teach our kindergartners?
Yeah, so.
It's not really age appropriate.
Right, I know the school nurses are working on that, on how to do that in a age appropriate way. We have back to school videos that staff watch, that this will be, working with BOCES will be one of the videos, annual video training, or a school nurse may do it in a faculty meeting. We haven't gotten that far yet, but we wanted to get this on the first read to get the ball going.
I mean, it's good to tell kids to look for these kind of symptoms. You don't have to say what it's from necessarily to a 5-year-old, but I just want to make sure we have a plan for training everybody.
Cool. And then one other thing.
Yeah.
It says this option permits staff volunteers to become trained responders to administer to students and staff only. So let's say it's a sporting event and someone's unfortunately has these signs and symptoms. We would not be able to help them?
Where are you?
Second page.
Well, that's very important because I feel like that's a good part of it, somebody is on our school property and, yeah.
I wonder if it's an insurance thing, whether we could.
You might not be able to, it
Yeah,
might be a
okay.
liability
Well, let's
thing.
find out.
I think we need to find that out.
Okay, cool.
And I don't think there's any negative, impact of giving someone Narcan, if you had it incorrectly administered. Now, we went over this in safety.
But if they have an alert, let's say they have a medical condition or potential allergic reactions, you don't necessarily know that, so if you haven't been trained, or if you don't know the student or the student's history.
Well, you might not even know if it's your student, right? A bunch of kids are at a game on.
No, I'm not talking about the kids, I'm talking about bystanders. If you, let's say you're a parent, I think there's more liability in letting them react, not providing what we have in our pocket, right? So just if we can clarify that.
I wonder if that's an SRO, does it fall to the SRO who would be able?
Here after hours, so.
Yeah. Yeah, or maybe
It's a good
security.
question for us to
Yeah, it's a very good
address.
question.
What does everybody know?
Madam President,
Yeah?
I'm an active firefighter, PreK, and I'm involved in the ambulance. There's good Samaritan law in New York State, we can probably cover this. And you don't want to hear the zipper of a body bag.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just do it. We're just safe first, yeah. Thank you.
So it sounds like we're safe to leave the language, and whoever is administering it is safe
to utilize it even in contrary to the language. So
Well, we might want to clarify that though, because if someone reads it and
Yeah,
then
they're
they're in a
scared to do it.
situation, they're scared to give it, like we want them
Yeah.
to know that it's okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
Life-saving measures.
Yep.
Anybody else have, any last minute? Okay, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Second.
All in favor?